Hi there, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Adventure Rider. For our first video of 2025, we've got a good one for you. This is going to be the best motorcycle adventure helmet on the market 2025. So we have 6 plus a bonus one, which we will show you at the end, which is an unreleased offering. And I've tried to kind of come up with some sort of scoring system. We're looking at 5 categories, all marked out of 10. So we have weight, comfort, ventilation, noise, and of course, value. These are all important factors. They're by no means the only factors. So without further ado, we're going to go through these in ascending price order. So first up, we will have the Bell MX-9 Adventure. So the Bell MX-9 Adventure was the first helmet I reviewed on this channel. The reason for going for it was that I simply needed a helmet and I wanted to spend as little as possible on something that was as good as it could be. And quite simply, where this is going to score a lot of marks is around the value, because it's so incredible. At normal RRP, it's £199 for a very high quality helmet. So if you don't need one with lots of bells and whistles, extras and accessories, you just want a dual sport that, like all other dual sports, you can use in 4 different configurations. So you can remove the peak, you can remove the visor, so you can have that therefore as just a sort of normal road helmet, or you can have it without the visor and with motocross goggles, etc. and so on. Then this will simply do that. It's got great ventilation. Being a Bell, it's very nicely finished. The paint schemes and the paint colors are really tasteful as well. This is the Alpine Charcoal. This is my helmet. I absolutely love this helmet to bits, and everything works on it surprisingly well. There are 3 shell sizes, so you get a good separation between the different sizes from extra small to 2XL with the shells. And you also get the inclusion of MIPS technology, which is multi-impact protection system, which is something that helps alleviate rotational forces transferred upon a crash through to your brain. And this is actually one of the highest areas of injury. It's from rotational forces rather than straight up linear impact. So the fact that Bell are giving you this tried and tested system over and above the minimum requirements for rotational force under 2206 is a massive bonus at this price. Doesn't matter what paint scheme you go for, they're all 199. The sizing is true to size. The head shape fit is pretty universal, so it's what we call intermediate oval. For weight, this comes in at 1700 grams, which is very average. So we're going to give it a 5. For comfort, it's going to get a 6. This was comfortable enough, but the cheek pads are not the most refined on the test. So for example, underneath, the cheek pads had a little bit of an angle to them. So when I first wore this, they were quite noticeable, a little bit sharp, but they bed in very quickly. And now it's just a helmet I can easily wear all day. Ventilation, 5. It's decent, it's nothing particularly special. Noise, again, it's okay, it's not the best, it's not the worst. It's not a helmet out of the ones in this test, if I was predominantly doing high-speed, road-based adventure touring, that I would choose, but it's good enough. All dual sport helmets as an average tend to be noisier than the road-focused counterparts, but this one's okay, and it's not the noisiest, so it's going to get a 6. Overall, a solid 10 for value, because you can't really beat it at this price in terms of absolute price being the cheapest, and also what you're getting is just a good helmet for fair money. So that gives us a total score of 32 for the Bell MX-9 Adventure. So moving on, next we have the Nexx X.Wed 3. This is the sort of opposite of the Bell, in the sense this one comes with all the bells and whistles. So at 329, this helmet in its standard shell, which is a tri-composite, gives you everything, essentially. It's the sort of Swiss Army knife of adventure helmets, in that it has an internal sun visor, it comes with a pinlock visor, it's very easy to take off all of the visor's peaks and accessories, it comes with action camera mounts, it comes with spare blanking plates, it comes with chin curtains. Literally every box that could be ticked pretty much is ticked in the Nexx X.Wed 3. It has a very clever peak that allows for minimal drag on the bike as you're going along from airflow as well, which is nice because it means you don't really need to take it off. You do have different price points in this particular helmet, so I'm going to focus on the cheaper of the 3. As you move up, you get the carbon, predominantly carbon shell, and the exposed carbon shell, which are more money, but for the sake of this review, and one I think represents the best overall, is going to be the standard options, which I think are really good at 329. So the integrated sun visor is a big thing, and that's something that a lot of people really do appreciate. I had never really been a big fan of sun visors because of the weight factor, but this one is 1700 grams like the Bell, yet it has the internal sun visor, so you're not getting penalized for weight. So therefore this comes in with a sort of similarly average score of 5, which is exactly the same as the Bell because the weight is the same. Things like the comfort are pretty high for this. So this is one of the most comfortable. As soon as you take it out of the box and put it on, this one has, again, a very universal fit, but there is no immediate pressure points I didn't find with this helmet, unlike the Bell. So a very, very comfortable helmet in general, and therefore getting a high score of 8 in that respect. Ventilation on this is really decent. Ventilation doesn't vary too much between all the helmets that we're going to show you today, because they generally all have a chin vent, and they generally will have vents up here, channels through the EPS. So out of this range I'm showing you of these top 6, if you like, they're all very good in that respect. So there's not going to be a huge difference in the scores here. It more comes down to the ergonomics of how easy or difficult they are to access. And they're all fairly well thought through with fairly decent ventilation when it comes to the operation of those vent systems. So ventilation, this one's going to score a 6. Then noise, this is actually one of the quieter ones. It's very solid as a helmet. It has a slightly wider shell profile, so I don't know if that's what's contributing, perhaps a slightly thicker EPS. I am conjecturing because I'm not able to take them out and measure them. But overall, this helmet, with the way that the visor seals, it's very, very solid. There's a very good seal all the way around, and that undoubtedly helps with this noise reduction. With the optional chin curtain as well, you're going to add to that too. So overall, scoring pretty highly with an 8 when it comes to noise. Value is also very high with this helmet, not as high as the Bell, but in at 329, the fact that you've got the internal sun shield, all the accessories I mentioned, you also get the pin lock. You get different levels of pin lock. So with the lower of the shell types here, you get pin lock 70, you get the pin lock max vision, the 120 with the carbon versions. So slightly points given away to some of the competition where you get the 120 on all of the helmets in the range, but it's very minor. The fact is you still get a pinlock visor with it, and of course that makes a big difference when it comes to the anti-fog. So overall, there's not a huge gulf when you consider all the extra accessories that you're getting with this to the Bell, and this one's a tri-composite shell, so it is a step up as well. So value score is going to be an 8 with the Nexx X.Wed 3, giving us a total score of 35. Moving along then to the Airoh Commander 2. This is a very recent release, and this is just a wonderful helmet. Where it's going to score the most marks, because it actually sits in quite a similar territory to the Nexx X.Wed 3 in terms of the kind of customer it's targeting, in that it comes with a lot of accessories that you can modulate the helmet with, and also it has an internal drop-down sun visor as well, operated here, which is very effective. This helmet differs only really in terms of concept from the Nexx X.Wed by being lighter. So this one comes in at 1440 grams, which is a good deal lighter than the average of sort of 1700 that we've had in the 2 previous helmets. However, it is a little bit more expensive. So this one's 374 as opposed to 329 in the cheaper of the Nexx X.Wed 3 range. And this one does score kind of near perfect marks for me in my humble opinion. And out of all the helmets I'm going to show you, interestingly, this is the one that I reach for day to day because of the lightness and the comfort. This is unbelievably comfortable, this helmet. It's a full 10 out of 10. It's very rare that you put a helmet on and immediately it feels comfortable, and it remains that every single day, every time you put it on. So that goes a long way into being the sort of one that you lean towards. If you've got a few different options, you just gravitate to the one that feels nicest, even if you're giving away perhaps some practical considerations. So for example, this one loses out to the Nexx X.Wed 3 in terms of things like the tool-free quick release systems on the visor. So this one you need a little Allen key for, and it is fiddly. It is also fiddly to take the peak off. You need to snap these caps off and then also unscrew those. So those are things that are annoying if they're things that are important to you. In practice, I don't think I have ever, even on long motorway journeys, bothered to stop beforehand and take the peak off. That's very much the idea with these helmets, but I just haven't in practice bothered to do it. If you've got a peak that's aerodynamically considered that you don't really notice, then there's no need. So for me, that then isn't such a factor, but other people it will be, and they will want to be able to take things like the peak and the visor off easily. This one also comes with the Pinlock 120 XL Max Vision, so this is the best Pinlock included with it, and because you have the internal sun visor as well, there's relatively few scenarios, unless I was out extensively off-road, where I would want to take off the visor in place of having goggles on, but you can of course have the visor up and still have goggles on too. So for me, subjectively, the fact that it isn't quite as well thought through on the quick release isn't a huge problem. For me, it's more about the looks, the feel, the weight, and the comfort. And this one is also coming with an accessories pack with chin curtains, blanking plates, and action mounts. as well. So to summarize with the Airoh Commander 2, with the weight at 1440, we're going to be getting an 8 out of 10 because that is really impressive. It's a helmet that basically follows the same EPS liner format and all the rest of the features that you get in everything except the climb, which obviously we'll get to later, and it is so much lighter than all the others that have a similar setup. So well done to Airoh for achieving that. Then when it comes to comfort, I've made it pretty clear, this is getting max marks. This is getting a 10 on comfort because simply put, it is the most comfortable. Ventilation, it's good, it's solid, it's relatively easy to use. It's got a really nice action as well on the chin, and the ventilation is pretty noticeable between being open and closed. So it's going to score sort of standard marks there of 6. Noise, this is, because perhaps it's lighter, it's not the quietest, it's not loud, and it's just going to get sort of average marks of 6 as well. When it comes to value, it loses out just a little bit to the Nexx because the Nexx is that bit cheaper, but if you put more value in the weight, then obviously it offsets itself. So we're going to give this a pretty solid value score of 7, which I think is very fair. So overall, that gives us a score of 37 for the Airoh Commander 2. So next up we have the Leatt Adventure Helmet. This is the one I reviewed just a couple of weeks back and has got a lot of views because people are very, very interested in this helmet. It is, as the name would suggest, it's their only one. It's their first effort at doing such a thing. And it's quite incredible when you see a brand who are actually very new to the adventure market full stop. They only entered it with their clothing last year, coming out with a new product that is near enough as perfect across the board. Massive hats off to the designers. In terms of the looks, it follows the styling of their 9.5 MX helmets, which I actually use when I'm pure off-road riding. There's 2 different shells. We have a tri-composite again, and we also have a 6-layer carbon matrix, which is slightly more expensive. That's really the main difference between the two, apart from a buckle system. But we're going to focus on the 8.5, which is the cheaper of the 2, which is the one that has the tri-composite shell. And that one comes in at 479. Again, 3 different shells in the range. The fit is absolutely true to size, as basically is the case with everything that we have here. This one comes with so many features. It comes with a clear visor included. It also comes with a photochromic visor included and Pinlock 120 XLT, which as I said is the best Pinlock. And it comes with Leatt's goggles as well as that. So literally everything you could possibly need when it comes to a fully spec'd setup with your dual sport adventure helmet. When a brand give you a goggle with a helmet, you know it's been designed literally to fit absolutely perfectly, and it really does. This one also comes with accessories like the chin curtain, the blanking plates, and so on and so forth. So you've got all the other accessories that you'll find too. You can really easily get the peak off. You literally just pull it off out of the points it comes in. It has the best tool-free visor removal system, so you just swing those and pull it and it's done in seconds. So for people who do want to be doing that, it's great. The goggles still work perfectly and fit perfectly with the visor up as well, so you don't have to remove the visor if you don't want to. This also comes with 360 turbine technology, which is Leatt's in-house equivalent of something like MIPS. The drag reduction system on this, I think, is the best in class. The aerodynamics have been so well considered. As you look at it front on, you see there are huge gaps leading to the way the airflow is going, and that really prevents it catching in the wind very, very effectively. So overall, as you can probably tell, I'm very impressed with this helmet. When it comes to the scoring, well, for weight, this one comes in at 14.75 in the carbon and 15.25 in the tri-composite. So tri-composite we're looking at today, so that's also very, very impressive. It loses out just slightly to the Airoh in weight, but it's a good couple of 100 grams lighter than the first 2 that we have in this lineup, and therefore we're going to score this a 7 on the weight. Comfort is perfectly good, very, very nice. It is simply that things like the Airoh and things like the Arai that I'm about to get to are more comfortable. So we're going to score this a 7. There's nothing wrong with it. It just took a little bit longer to sort of become plush and bed in than some of the others on this test. Similarly on ventilation, this is going to score much like the others. This is going to get a 7 because the ventilation on this is highly effective. I'm not mad on the tiny little, quite sort of analog feeling clicker system on the chin vent, but it is really noticeable the difference when you have that open and closed, and the EPS has really big channels for ventilation and exit vents as well. And when it comes to noise, surprisingly quiet. Again, for a lighter helmet, it's generally more of a challenge to make it quiet, but this one was, until recently, the quietest I had actually reviewed and ridden with, so very impressive. So it's going to be an 8 for noise. And overall value, I'm going to score this one a 9. The reason being, in at 479, it doesn't sound like headline amazing value, but let's just go back through some of those features. The photochromic lens it comes with is going to be usually £150 at least. The goggles, probably about 50. And then the fact that you've also got the Pinlock 120, that's going to be another 30 or so. So when you start including those costs into the overall picture, you're only looking at 60 or so pounds more for the actual core helmet than something like the Bell MX9 Adventure, and you are getting a better shell here. So again, given that we scored the Bell a 10, I think we have to give this as very good value. It's kind of only losing out in absolute terms because you're paying more money, but for what you're getting everything you could possibly need in at 479. So in that sense, I think very good value, all things considered. And therefore, overall score for the Leatt, we're going to be getting a 38 by my scoring system. And next up, we have the Arai Tour X5. This is the most well-known helmet in the dual sport segment. It's sort of the one that started it all with Ewan and Charlie. The Tour X5 is an evolution from the Tour X4, and it was released about a year and a bit ago. It was actually one of the first 2206 dual sport helmets to come out. And really, it's very much the same kettle of fish as what we had before with the Tour X4, which was a very popular helmet. The main difference, if I was to try and summarize it quickly, is the rounded nature of the shell. So it's moved away slightly from that more angular front, a little bit like the Airoh that we talked about earlier, to a more rounded shell that's a bit more like the RX-7, which is their top of the line racing helmet. The peak itself doesn't have particularly big cutouts, but you'll notice there is a huge gap. It's more of a sort of half visor peak at the front with a large gap here for the shell. So it does a good job of drag reduction. So they won't put things like integrated drop-down sun visors because they say it detracts from the safety of the helmet. I personally don't necessarily agree with that. I would like to see a version that did have it, but I respect Arai for sort of sticking to their guns in that respect. It's one of the more rounded and one of the less angular helmets here. So again, that might be a reason that people are quite drawn to it. It's expensive. There's no doubt this is going to lose out quite a lot in value terms because really you just get the helmet and a Pinlock visor with it. The Pinlock, let's say that's £30 or so. And therefore at $599 for a plain colour and $699 if you don't want plain, that's a lot of money for a helmet. So value is not the focus of why you're buying one of these helmets. You're buying it because, in my opinion, the ventilation's good, the comfort's good, and it's a known quantity. It's an Arai, it's a very, very highly respected brand. There is no doubt you are paying for that. And it's the obvious choice. You can't go wrong with an Arai. You will be happy with an Arai, but trying and testing everything as I have, I do think other helmets do have quite a strong claim in certain areas to sort of be better in various respects than what this offers, but it's still a very good helmet and it still makes, as it's here on the table, our best of video. So in terms of weight, this is 1700. Partly that's what I mean. This is quite a standard weight. It's not heavy, but it's not light compared to some of the more impressively lightweight helmets that we have here. Comfort, this is one of the two that's going to score a 10. It's such a great, comfortable helmet. Arai's facial contour system, they call it inside with the cheek pads, is very, very highly researched. It's the most intricate and just highly developed, and you notice that, you really do. And that makes the helmet extremely comfortable to begin with. But the Arai is just doing the best job along with that Airoh when it comes to just overall immediate comfort. They've put years and years of research into it. Moving on to ventilation, this one does have some of the best ventilation out there. It does a very good job. It's very similar to what we had before. I don't know that it's massively improved from the Tour X4, but it was very, very good in that respect. So this is going to score 7. Noise, this one is one of the quieter helmets out there, and that's partly probably because of the fiberglass shell with the multi-density EPS liner and the fact that overall it's that little bit more weighty. But it's in a very similar ballpark to most of the other things. But we're going to score this an 8 because, to be fair, it is pretty good at the noise reduction. And in value, unfortunately, we're only going to get a 2 because, as I said, there's not much to commend it in terms of value because apart from that Pinlock, you're just getting the helmet. And as I said, at $599, it's quite a lot. So the overall combined score for the Arai is going to be 32. And now we move on to near the top of the tree. This is the Klim Krios Pro, and this is qualitatively different to all of the other helmets in the lineup by virtue of the liner. So all of the others feature a EPS liner, which is polystyrene. It's a method of lining in helmets that's been around for a long, long time because fundamentally it works. But Klim have adopted a different approach which uses something called Koroyd. Koroyd is difficult to describe without seeing it, but it's like thermally fused straws, and that means that the majority of the liner is actually just air. The straws make up quite a small portion of that, the actual plastic of it. But the main point behind Koroyd is that it has a far more consistently linear decompression rate than EPS. If you imagine a wedge of polystyrene, it's going to compress more easily, and then as it gets smaller through compression, there's going to be more and more resistance, whereas the Koroyd is linear virtually all the way through. And the side effect of that is that it's extremely light, and it also therefore has some benefits when it comes to the ventilation side of things as well. So the Klim Krios Pro is a very popular helmet. It's quite expensive. It's a Klim, and Klim usually is expensive, but at least with this helmet we have a very strong claim as to why that could be the case. The weight of this is 1,250 grams, which is an astonishing difference. If you think that the Arai is 1,700 and the sort of center point of the whole market is usually around 1,750, we're looking at 500 grams less, half a kilo, which, there is a flaw to how light you can make a helmet in terms of there's like a minimum, surely, when you consider what needs to go into one. And this has to be close to what is physically possible in lightness. And in that respect, it's very, very impressive. There are lots of people I know that use this helmet, and I know lots of people who spend a lot of time on a motorbike that use this helmet. Instructors, off-road, excursion, tour operators, and they will use this because of that lightweight. And I'm usually one to support what others have said on the interwebs, which is that weight is not a massive deal. If you've got one that's 100 grams more or less, or even a couple of hundred grams, you're not going to notice a huge difference. But 500 grams, that is quite a bit, and you will notice. So if you are using it all day, especially if you're doing a lot of off-road riding and you think of the extra pressures and strain on your neck as you're trying to steady yourself, this does translate into a much higher degree of comfort and something that's quite a big deal to people. So it shouldn't be pushed aside saying weight's not important, because it definitely can be when you've got this significant a saving. Therefore, I would summarize that the Krios Pro is really good for people who genuinely have an off-road focus. It's slightly noisier because of all the lightness, and that's the sort of downside to it, but it's a very well put together helmet. It also comes with a photochromic visor included as well, which, as I said, is a good thing. So the price point of this comes in at £660. So in basic terms, it's more expensive than the cheapest plain coloured Arai Tour X5, but it's less than an Arai with graphics. So for example, this one here is the same price of $660 regardless whether it's plain or whether it's got the graphics on it, which thumbs up from me. But factoring in the visor, it actually turns out to be cheaper effectively than the Arai. You also get the pin lock as well, so that's like for like, but the extra visor is definitely a qualitative benefit that you're getting with the Klim. There are only 2 shell sizes in the Krios Pro, which is definitely a small criticism, because it goes extra small, medium, and that's the first 3. So we have a medium here, and it doesn't look too big. But if you go up to large, so just let's say you're 1 centimeter more than your friend in terms of head circumference, then you have a much bigger shell in the large than you do the medium. So for me, that's less optimal than having 3 shell sizes, which is par for the course with most of the good brands that we have in this lineup. A few features on it, like I think that the visor is a little plasticky, and the seal itself isn't that brilliant as compared to some of the others in the lineup, but these are relatively marginal things. As I said, this isn't going to be the quietest helmet out there on the market compared to some of the others that we've looked at. This is, for me, the one that has slightly more of an off-road focus. So scores are in. We are going to get, for weight, unsurprisingly, a 10. This is a 10 out of 10. You can't get lighter than this. Comfort, this is a very comfortable helmet, partly in relation to that earlier point about weight, but overall it's just a very nice helmet to put on your head. It's not the best, but it's still going to get a solid score of 7. The ventilation on this is plentiful, it's very lightweight, so again, this all kind of feeds into that same point, and this is going to score 8. Noise, it's definitely one of the noisier helmets out there as a side effect of the thing that gives it the good scores, and it's going to get a 5. Value, it's going to score 4, which isn't particularly high, but it's definitely scoring higher than the Arai, which only scored 2 on account of, as I mentioned, things like the photochromic visor being included. You're not getting penalised for different colourways, and the fact that you are really getting a very, very lightweight helmet. Have I said that before? So overall, this is going to score 34 for the Klim Krios Pro. And so that completes our lineup of the best helmets that are already out, but we have one to tease here for you. This is the Klim X1 Alpha helmet. Klim actually have two new helmets coming out very shortly in 2025, the X1 Alpha, and they also have the GT, which is going to be a flip front, which is quite interesting because Klim haven't really done anything like that. The price for this one though, and I can hear you guys already poised on your keyboards, is £880, and you do get some things that will go some way to justifying that, but let's not beat about the bush. It's a lot of money for a helmet. This is hand-laced carbon shell from Klim, so about as good as you can get in a shell, to be fair. The Koroyd liner, a very, very comfortable interior. You also get the photochromic visor included with this. It's also UV resistant and it has infrared prevention technology. So sun will not warm this helmet up through the visor, which is a big difference. And they had a very, very impressive display actually at EICMA, measuring the temperature inside versus a helmet that didn't have an infrared resistant visor on it. And it seriously made a very noticeable difference. So I was quite impressed by that. I've been told not to use this helmet, but I have, I must admit, so I'm probably gonna get in trouble with Klim. And the interesting thing to me was that this was extremely quiet and extremely comfortable on the road. And that has quite a different application because I mentioned the Krios Pro being really good for off-road riding, but this becomes for me much, much more of a credible adventure touring helmet than the Krios Pro was. Everything that was good about the helmet before still applies, but there's definitely, I think, a wider range of benefits from this helmet across all the types of adventure riding that you're going to want to do as compared to the Krios Pro. That said, when we reduce this down to scores in individual categories, you're not going to notice a huge difference. It's difficult to describe, and I will go into far more detail in the upcoming dedicated video review, so stay for that in the next week or so. In terms of weight, we're going to give this an 8, which is what we gave the Airoh Commander 2. Comfort, this is a 9. It's very nearly one of the most comfortable, but it's just slightly losing out to some extremely comfortable helmets. Ventilation is, again, very similar to the Krios Pro in that respect, so we're going to give this an 8. Noise though, this is going to score the highest marks as a 9, which is, I think, realistically as high as we can expect from a dual sport helmet that doesn't weigh an absolute ton. It's very, very quiet to ride with, which I was very impressed with. Value, going to score a 0, which is only fair because at £880, I can't argue in favour of value. You know, even with the photochromatic visor and the pin lock included, if we take that off of the total price, we're still at more than the Krios Pro, and so on. So you're not buying this helmet because value is important to you, and it's only fair to score that accordingly. But you know, if you exclude value from the equation and that's not important to you, you just want the helmet that does the best job in whatever field, then of course that will materially change the outcome of the result and the ranking for you. So the final score for the X1 Alpha is going to be the same actually as the Krios Pro of 34, but as I said, I don't think that tells the full picture. I think it is a very, very wide-ranging helmet, and the Krios Pro will continue through 25 alongside this and the GT Air as the other new release as well. So Klim have quite a strong collection of helmets coming, albeit at the top of the pricing spectrum. And so there we have it, a quite incredible lineup of helmets, to be completely frank. And as I have already said, there are many, many more that will be within a point or two of the ones that I have scored for you in today's lineup. You can't really go wrong. In essence, if you have one that fits your budget, you can go based on looks pretty much, unless you have key specific features that you want. But there is a lot of nuance to these, and there's something for everybody. And that's a really great position to be in. We have such a wonderful lineup of helmets. So in terms of the final scores and the assessment, it's fairly meaningless, but just for what it's worth, let's go through. So in reverse order, we've got tied in 6th place, we have the Bell MX-9 Adventure and the Arai Tour X5. Both basically coming as they are and both giving you very, very different price points. If value is an important factor for you, and I was almost going to give double points for value, it would have materially changed the outcomes of things. The Bell would have scored, of course, much higher because that's what it's all about. It does what it does really well. The Arai, for the exact same opposite reason, is going to lose out because it's a really good helmet, but it's just quite a lot for what it is in terms of price. And then we have in equal 4th place, we have the Klim Krios Pro and the X1 Alpha as well. These are, again, struggling just against the value of what we have on offer elsewhere, but they're very, very good helmets. They're a little bit more distinctive in terms of looks, perhaps, but they are very well finished. The X1 Alpha for me, you know, if I was going to just do away with the scoring, I would say it's a qualitatively better helmet, and I do think it's a little bit more versatile, but the results are what they are. And then in third place, we have the Nexx X.Wed 3, which is just a really brilliant helmet. It is something that kind of does everything, unless you need a photochromic visor as opposed to the inserted sun visor that drops down. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's really good value for what you're getting. It really comes down to, for me, between this and the Airoh Commander, which is in a similar price territory, doing a similar thing, the looks. And I marginally prefer the looks of the Airoh and the slightly narrower profile of it, but it is by no means an objective fact. So then, just pipping that in at number 2, we have the Airoh Commander 2, and that's going to score 37. And this is a helmet that, as I said, in practice, it's the one that I'm drawn to, that I use, because it's just so good at what it does, and it's near perfect. If it weren't for a couple of minor things to do with the visor, I would really never have any reason to want to use any other helmet at all. But beating everything else, the newest entrant, the upstart, is the Leatt Adventure helmet. It's such a comprehensive package, so well put together. You will never need anything else, and you will be thrilled to own it, to use it, to interact with it, to put it in all the different configurations, whereas in practice, some of the others you're just going to not want to because of the fiddly nature of it. You don't need to carry tools, and this one does everything so well. It's super safe. It's really nice and form-fitted. It's going to work whether you do adventure touring or full-on adventure off-road, and it's going to work equally well to a similarly high standard. So for me, this would be my one pick if I had to tell you buy one. But of course, that isn't the end of the story. It's down to you guys, what you think and what you like. But thank you very much for watching. This is the first of our top series, or best of series. We're going to have more coming soon, including best adventure jackets, which is going to be quite an interesting one with all the different approaches you can have to layering, waterproofing, protection, and so on. So stay tuned to the channel. There's going to be some really cool stuff happening in 2025, and we will see you shortly again soon. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.